What's up, everybody? Welcome to another World Cup recap here on Touchline Talk. As always, before I jump in, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. You can also find all of my written work, including my match report for the U.S. men's national team's win over Iran on Substack. So you can find that by scanning that QR code right next to me on the screen. So be sure to check that out as well. Wasn't always pretty. There was plenty of stress at the end. But the U.S. do get through after another really, really good overall performance, beating Iran 1-0 to claim the second spot in Group B. The first thing I want to say here before I jump into the actual game, I will completely own I was concerned about the off-field distractions, about the lack of squad rotation heading into this game and the impact it was going to have. The U.S. Soccer Public Relations team created an international controversy without telling the team, the coaches, or the U.S. government. Completely unnecessary. And of course, the players, the people who are actually going to be involved in determining whether the U.S. won this must-win game, had nothing to do with that. Eric Wynalda is talking about this rift between Greg Berhalter and Gio Reyna, and that Claudio Reyna, Gio's father, is fuming, and then basically walks all of it back and says, it's really not that big of a deal. I said a bunch of things that made it seem like something it was not, and I chose my words poorly. You've got that going on. You've got the Jurgen Klinsmann stuff going on. All of these distractions that were created outside of what this actual team and this coaching staff could control. And I just really wondered, it's all bulletin board material. I really wondered how much I thought there was going to be an impact here. I was really wondering if that was going to be one of the things we came out of this game talking about in terms of why the U.S. didn't advance, was because all the stuff they could control from a overall bulletin board material standpoint, not the team itself, not the coaches, but the overall sort of situation, they failed to control. And then they came out and played and absolutely dominated. Iran didn't have a shot in the first half. It was another spectacular U.S. performance. And so you do ultimately get your goal near halftime from Christian Pulisic. He pays the price, leaves the game, appears to be some kind of abdominal injury. Nobody seems to, I haven't seen anything, I'm recording this pretty much right after the game, haven't seen anything about his status moving forward. It looks like there's going to be some scans, so I don't even think Greg Berhalter knows what his status is going to be. But you get that goal that you need to take the pressure off of you, put it on Iran, make Iran play a different game than they want to, and it's Christian Pulisic who delivers. The other part of this that deserves mentioning, it's the pass before the header that Sergiño Dest had when he sent it across to Pulisic. That pass came from Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie didn't have an overall terrific game. He was quiet for most of it when he was on the field, and he got subbed pretty early. But there were two occasions, the goal and the goal that Tim Weah almost had where he was just offside, where Weston McKennie played a ball that unlocked that Iranian defense. And what is the thing we have consistently talked about during this World Cup with this team? Quality in the final third. Can you make that one decisive pass to open up a team? Weston McKennie did it twice in this game. Overall, I thought he was better against England. He didn't sort of have his influence in the game the way that he did against England. But those two passes, that is what it is going to take. And it wasn't, this dominant performance where this game was never in doubt. They didn't take their chances again for the most part, but they got the one chance they need because Weston McKennie had that one moment. He plays that ball across to Sergiño Dest, picks him out. Dest then does his job to get it across to Pulisic. Pulisic does his job, sacrifices himself for his team, and gets that goal. When you're playing as well as they are defensively, you just need one or two of those passes a game, and Weston McKennie was the guy who provided them in this one. And on the midfield in general, they were superb again. I continue to be blown away with how good that trio is. And as I've talked about, they all offer you something a little bit different. This was probably Tyler Adams' worst game of the three, and that's only because he's been one of the best, 10 or so players in the tournament so far. Yunus Musa, another really good performance, completing 90% of his passes, I think it was, just popping up all over the place. I continue to talk about his ball carrying ability. And Weston McKennie, that little bit something special, a little something different, the improvisation, you saw that too. Now you would expect them to dominate the midfield in this game because of the personnel, but they did it against England, they did it against Wales. This U.S. team doesn't have, the top to bottom firepower to go with the best teams in the world. But there are only, I can probably count them on one hand. Maybe that's a little extreme, but I don't think it is. The amount of midfield's better than that trio. Particularly if you're picking three midfielders. Croatia's comes to mind. Obviously, England's. You can talk about, obviously your other favorites, your Spain's, your Brazil's, those kind of teams. But you run outside of the obvious favorites in this tournament, there are just not many midfield's better than this one. And they showed it again in this game. Which goes to the larger point I want to make, which is this team advancing is 100% deserved based on these three performances. You can argue England were better over the three games, and we'll get to England in a minute here. But the U.S. played three times, and there was no doubt who the better team on that field was every single game, and that was the U.S. On the flip side, they nearly failed to advance out of the group stage, which goes to kind of this two-pronged idea that I really came away from this game thinking about. One is there is so much room for improvement still. If this team could just play a full 90 minutes or just have a little bit more quality in the final third, you are really onto something. Because if this is the foundation, if this is barely making it out of the group, imagine what a complete performance and a little bit more quality will give you for this team. That is how high their ceiling is. The other part of that is moving forward, you got to find a way to play 90 minutes. Your margin of error is just going to get slimmer and slimmer if the U.S. are starting with the Netherlands and if the U.S. are able to advance out of that game. This game had a similar feel to the Wales game. Completely dominant first half, still generally in control in the second half, but only had a chance or two, couldn't find the second goal, and it was more stressful than it needed to be at the end. The difference was the U.S. didn't make the big mistake this time. And Walker Zimmerman came in, was really good in the air, had a couple important plays, clearing that one ball that got past Matt Turner. Iran certainly had their chances. They didn't come all that close to scoring. But that is the next step. And you heard John Strong was talking about in the commentary. The players coming to halftime were saying, we can't give them a foothold. We need to continue to dominate this game, and they weren't able to do that. That is the next step here. You can be the better team all you want, but if it only results in a one-goal lead, you are always going to put yourself in that stressful situation in the last 15 minutes. You saw what this team can do against England. I would argue that was the most complete 90 we've seen. But against Wales and against Iran, it got stressful at the end. And to a certain extent, that's always going to happen. And this is, again, going back to my load management concern and my squad rotation theory that I would like to see more players get more minutes so that you're not asking the same guys to continue to play 75, 90 minutes. So that they're a little bit fresher at the end of games. I also understand you're not taking Tyler Adams off the field unless you are in a really good position, and the U.S., I would have done it against England probably. But certainly in this game, the U.S. did not have that luxury. So moving forward, what is the sort of the gas tank for these guys? Do they can they find a way to move into that extra gear in the second half so that it doesn't kind of repeat the same theme of excellent in the first half, and then kind of falling off. You feel like you should have a second goal, you don't get it, and then one mistake, one moment, and all of a sudden the game is tied. They didn't have that mistake. They didn't concede that moment in this game, and that's why they're going through. And so just overall looking at this, that was maybe not the most difficult group. That's probably extreme. But a tricky group with different teams that pose different kind of problems. And you had a must-win game, and you had to play England. And the U.S. looked really good in the games where they were given the ball, Wales and Iran, and looked really good in the game where you would have expected England to have the ball. The U.S. just didn't even let them have it. Plan A, imposing your will on opponents, is working, and it's working against everybody. And that was one of my big questions coming into this tournament. I believed this team could do it, but I hadn't seen it, and you certainly didn't see it in that final tune-up window. I also feel validated in my belief that this team was always built for World Cups, built to play against better opponents, and not to get kicked around the field like they do in CONCACAF. And so I say all of this to end on this point. And I'll probably get back to this whenever the U.S. end up getting eliminated if they fail to win the World Cup. But I do want to say it now. It is okay to be incredibly confident in this team. This is not a team that you're just happy to be in the round of 16. You're happy to have a moral victory against England. This is a team that is easily one of the best 15 in the world. And I would argue there is still more that can be gotten out of this team. And it's sort of the comparison to Canada where you feel like, now not so much at this tournament, but you feel like John Herdman is getting just about everything he can out of this team. I'm not sure we've seen the absolute best from this U.S. team, as good as they have been. And that is because this team is that talented. And whether it's, the international perception, which at this point, if you continue to believe this team isn't very good and they're just the United States after what they've done in this tournament and what they did to England, that's on you just being naive and not paying attention. I feel like we just need to get to a point collectively as people following United States soccer and saying, we don't have to be scared of anybody. This team legitimately is that good. They showed it 3 consecutive games. And if they could just put it all together and not sort of fall off in the second half, you're going to get 3 performances like the one you saw against England rather than 2 excellent first halves and some shaky final 15, 20 minutes like you saw against Iran and Wales. But this is what should be expected. This is the benchmark moving forward. Because this team is, and maybe you could make an argument for 2002, but this team is just on another level talent-wise, and you're seeing that. You're not just hoping to play with the best teams. These guys play against the players on those best teams every single day in training and every single week in the top leagues in Europe. The U.S. didn't start an MLS player in this game because they put the guy in who's, sometimes captaining Celtic and played in the Champions League this season instead. Think about that for a second. I just get frustrated. Sometimes I get frustrated and I feel like we don't give this group the recognition they deserve in terms of their talent level, and particularly, and it was fair to wonder, okay, we need to see them do it at a major tournament. It sounds great in theory, look at where all these guys are playing, I need to see it actually happen when it matters. Absolutely fair, I was in that camp too. Now we've seen it 3 games in a row. You got to get the results. They did that. They didn't do it as convincingly as you would like. But from a process standpoint, from an optics standpoint, from a performance standpoint, they have been absolutely phenomenal. And that needs to be celebrated no matter what happens moving forward. Because this is the building block for 2026. And as much as this team has the ability to make a run in this tournament, nobody is expecting, a run to the semifinals. They can beat anybody on any given day. But I'm also looking at this through the lens of 2026 because that is when this team is, in theory, going to be at its peak. And if this is where you're starting, it is incredibly exciting to think about where this team can go based on what they've done in this tournament, no matter what happens moving forward. Real quickly, I want to highlight the other games that have happened here in Groups A and B. As I mentioned, England take care of Wales. Not too much to say about this one other than Marcus Rashford was all over the place, scoring on free kicks, causing chaos. He was phenomenal. England get through easily, top the group, which means they are going to get the group second place team in Group A. The U.S. will be playing the winners of Group A, who we'll get to in a second, who are the Netherlands. So it's U.S., Netherlands, England, Senegal in the round of 16. Senegal were the better team for a vast majority of this game against Ecuador. It was sort of similar to the U.S. in one of those winner-take-all situations. Ecuador came in with that extra point, so Senegal knew they had to win, played like it from the opening whistle. Ecuador just never got a foothold in the game. Ismail Assar was really good in the first half, draws a penalty, converts the penalty. Then kind of out of nowhere, Moises Caicedo, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite young players in the world, equalizes, and Ecuador are back in that second position. And right after that, Kalidou Koulibaly steps up for Senegal to get that second goal. And, Ecuador tried late on, but Senegal were really in control of this game from start to finish and responded immediately after conceding. Deserved winners, deserved to go through. So that is your second place team who will be playing England. And then, as I mentioned, the Netherlands finishing atop Group A. As you would expect, they beat Qatar. Cody Gakpo scores again. His price tag is just going up and up and up. PSV have to be loving that. He's providing you something different in attack for a team that, outside of him, have struggled in that area and just don't have the same kind of firepower at the sort of the front end of the field that the previous editions of this team, 2010, 2014, did. But Cody Gakpo is the future of this Netherlands men's national team, and he is the present as well. So they do what you would expect. Dominant performance. Certainly deserve the 3 points. Get the 3 points and the clean sheet to win Group A. That is all for this World Cup recap. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.